On that cold October night in 1575, the greatest scandal in history was unfolding in the secret corridors of Greenwich Palace. Queen Elizabeth of England, at 42 years old, was holding a man's hand by candlelight, swearing, "Until death do us part." But this man was not her husband, not officially. What happened that night will show you how a queen risked her throne for love, how she endangered an entire nation. And the end of this story will forever change how you view English history. Our story actually begins in 1533. When Robert Dudley was born as the son of John Dudley, no one could have predicted that his fate would intertwine with England's most powerful woman. His father, John Dudley, was one of the most influential politicians of the time, and also one of England's most dangerous men. Elizabeth and Robert's first meeting occurred when they were both children. In 1547, Elizabeth was 14, Robert was also 14. Both were being educated at court, and an immediate closeness began between them. But this innocent childhood friendship would evolve into a dangerous love over the years. In 1553, Robert's father, John Dudley, was executed for attempting to put Lady Jane Grey on the throne. Robert's family completely collapsed, his fortune was seized, and he himself was imprisoned in the Tower of London. Elizabeth was then a young woman still trying to become a princess, and had no power to help Robert. When Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1558, one of her first acts was to recall Robert Dudley to her court. She gave him the title Master of the Horse, responsible for the royal stables. When Robert took this position, he was married. His wife was Amy Robsart, an ordinary woman living in Norfolk. Amy was beautiful, but ordinary. She had no education, didn't understand court life, and was uncomfortable with her husband's closeness to the Queen. From 1559 onwards, Robert was going home less and less, spending more time at court. Amy complained about her husband in her letters. "Robert no longer sees me. He spends all his time with that woman." That woman was, of course, Elizabeth. In the summer of 1560, according to court gossip, Elizabeth had become pregnant. This rumor was never confirmed, but it was the last straw for Amy Robsart. She threatened to file for divorce from her husband. On the morning of September 8th, 1560, Amy Robsart was found dead at the bottom of the stairs in her house. Her neck was broken. All the servants in the house had gone to market that day on Amy's own orders. Only Amy had stayed home. The official investigation concluded accident, but no one believed it. Everyone thought Robert had murdered his wife. Some even said Elizabeth had ordered it. After Amy's death, Elizabeth found herself in a difficult position. If she married Robert, the people would see her as a murderer's wife, but she couldn't give up Robert either. In the autumn of 1560, Elizabeth told her private advisor William Cecil, "I know what everyone thinks, but I know Robert is innocent. He's not a man who would do such a thing." Cecil gave the Queen this response: "Your Majesty, if you marry Robert Lord Dudley, you cannot remain on the throne. The people will not allow it. Parliament will revolt against you." These words greatly affected Elizabeth, but she couldn't give up her love either. For the next 15 years, Elizabeth and Robert lived a secret relationship. During this period, Elizabeth received many marriage proposals. The King of France's brother, the King of Spain, the Archduke of Austria, they all wanted to marry Elizabeth, but Elizabeth rejected them all. Robert was always behind these rejections. In her private letters, Elizabeth addressed him as "my eyes." Robert called her "my goddess." In 1564, Elizabeth gave Robert the earldom of Leicester. This earned him the title of Lord and increased the possibility of marriage. But they still didn't marry. Do you wonder why they didn't marry? In Elizabeth's private diary, which was found in the 1980s, these lines appear: "If I marry Robert, I can no longer be queen, because the people will never forgive me. They will never forget Amy's death. But I cannot live without him either. What should I do in this situation?" In 1573, something terrible happened. Robert Dudley secretly married another woman. This woman was Lettice Knowles, Elizabeth's cousin. When Elizabeth learned this, she went mad. She banished Robert from court, took back all his titles. But only 3 months later, she called him back, because she couldn't live without him. Robert came to Elizabeth and apologized. "Your Majesty, I realized I could never marry you. I needed to leave an heir, but I never stopped loving you. Elizabeth gave this response. You are my greatest love, but you are also my greatest pain. In the summer of 1575, Elizabeth turned 42. Her chance of having children was now almost zero. Parliament was constantly pressuring her. Your Majesty, you must marry. The country must have an heir. But Elizabeth had a different plan in mind. In August of that year, the Queen summoned her private advisor, Dr. John Dee. Dee was the Queen's astrologer and secret advisor. Elizabeth told him, John, I'm going to give you a very special task. No one will know. This will stay between us. Dee waited curiously. Elizabeth continued, I want to marry Robert, but it won't be an official marriage. A secret ceremony. You will be the witness. Dee was surprised. Your Majesty, this is very dangerous. If it's discovered, it won't be discovered, Elizabeth said decisively, because only 3 people will know. You, my nurse Blanche, and the priest who will perform the ceremony. On the night of October 8, 1575, history's most secret wedding took place at Greenwich Palace. Location, the Queen's private chapel. Time, midnight. Witnesses, John Dee, Blanche Perry officiant, Dr. Julio Borgaruxi, Italian physician priest. Elizabeth wore a simple white dress that night, with small flowers in her hair. Robert wore a black velvet jacket and gold-embroidered trousers. The ceremony was very brief. Dr. Julio administered the vows in Latin. Elizabeth Regina, do you take Robert as your husband? I do. Robert Dudley, do you take Elizabeth as your wife? I do, until death do us part. For the ring ceremony, Elizabeth had a special ring made. Inside it was engraved, E+R Forever, 1575. John Dee describes the atmosphere that night in his diary. Her Majesty was very happy. Her eyes were sparkling. So was Robert. They were both truly in love. But I had a very bad feeling inside. This marriage would not end well. The 3 weeks after the marriage were the happiest days of Elizabeth's life. During the day, she was queen. At night, she was Robert's wife. Robert gave Elizabeth special gifts. One night, he put a diamond necklace on her and said, Now you are truly my wife. No one can change that. Elizabeth replied to Robert, You are the king of my heart. Thrones come and go, but you are mine forever. But this happiness didn't last long. On the morning of October 29th, 1575, Dr. Julio Borgaruxi was found dead in the Thames River. His body was swollen. His face was purple. Official report. Had a heart attack. Fell into the river. But John Dee's secret notes contained these details. Julio's fingertips were blue. This is a sign of poisoning. Also, there were beating marks on his body. Someone killed him. This death horrified Elizabeth. Julio was one of the 3 people who knew their marriage secret, and now he was dead. Elizabeth immediately summoned Robert. Someone may have learned our secret. They killed Julio. Robert tried to stay calm. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe he really had a heart attack. No, Elizabeth shouted. This is not a coincidence. Someone knows. On the morning of October 29th, 1575, Dr. Julio Borgaruxi was found dead in the Thames River. His body was swollen. His face was purple. Official report. Had a heart attack. Fell into the river. But John Dee's secret notes contained these details. Julio's fingertips were blue. This is a sign of poisoning. Also, there were beating marks on his body. Someone killed him. This death horrified Elizabeth. Julio was one of the 3 people who knew their marriage secret, and now he was dead. Elizabeth immediately summoned Robert. Someone may have learned our secret. They killed Julio. Robert tried to stay calm. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe he really had a heart attack. No, Elizabeth shouted. This is not a coincidence. Someone knows. In December, the second shock came. Blanche Perry, Elizabeth's nurse and marriage witness, became seriously ill. She was coughing, feverish, and delirious. In her sickbed, Blanche was saying, Marriage, secret marriage, Robert, Queen, no one should know. Elizabeth was horrified. Blanche was revealing their secrets in her illness. If the wrong person heard, everything would be exposed. Elizabeth waited by Blanche's bedside and whispered to her, "Nurse, please be quiet. Don't say anything." Blanche replied unconsciously, "Your Majesty, very dangerous, they know." At the end of December, Elizabeth made a terrible decision. She summoned Robert at night and told him, "Robert, this marriage is over." Robert was surprised. "What do you mean?" "This marriage never happened. It never took place. If you say a word, I will declare you a traitor." Robert asked with a broken heart, "But why?" "We were happy." Elizabeth replied through tears, "Because this marriage would cost me the throne. And an Elizabeth without a throne is an Elizabeth of no use to you." At the end of December, Elizabeth made a terrible decision. She summoned Robert at night and told him, "Robert, this marriage is over." Robert was surprised. "What do you mean?" "This marriage never happened. It never took place. If you say a word, I will declare you a traitor." Robert asked with a broken heart, "But why?" "We were happy." Elizabeth replied through tears, "Because this marriage would cost me the throne. And an Elizabeth without a throne is an Elizabeth of no use to you." In February 1576, Elizabeth gave Robert the title Earl of Leicester and sent him to Ireland. This was a de facto separation. Before Robert left, he gave Elizabeth one last gift, a golden locket. Inside was his portrait, and underneath it said, "Your devoted husband forever." Elizabeth took this locket and pressed it to her chest. "You are always in my heart. But now what we lived is just a dream." For the next 12 years, both kept this secret. Robert fought in Ireland, then in the Netherlands. Elizabeth ruled England. But throughout these years, they continued to write letters to each other. Most of these letters were burned, but some were kept in the royal archives. A 1582 letter from Robert. "Dear E, every night I look at the stars and remember our night. The stars are still witnesses. You are still my wife." Elizabeth's 1585 response. "Dear R, I have never forgotten that night either. But that Elizabeth no longer exists. I am only queen. I am nothing more." For the next 12 years, both kept this secret. Robert fought in Ireland, then in the Netherlands. Elizabeth ruled England. But throughout these years, they continued to write letters to each other. Most of these letters were burned, but some were kept in the royal archives. A 1582 letter from Robert. "Dear E, every night I look at the stars and remember our night. The stars are still witnesses. You are still my wife." Elizabeth's 1585 response. "Dear R, I have never forgotten that night either. But that Elizabeth no longer exists. I am only queen. I am nothing more." In the summer of 1587, Robert returned to England. He met with Elizabeth for the last time. John Dee describes this meeting in his diary. "Lord Leicester is at court. Her Majesty received him in her private chambers. They have both aged. Robert's hair has turned white. Elizabeth has lines on her face. But when they look at each other, they still look like those young lovers." What they discussed in this meeting is unknown. But afterwards, Elizabeth cried for days. Robert Dudley died on September 4th, 1588. Cause of death, stomach cancer. Before dying, he wrote his last letter to Elizabeth. "My dear goddess, I am dying. But before I die, I must tell you the truth. I never forgot the vows we made in 1575. You became my queen, but you were also my wife. I take this secret to my grave. But know that I die as the man who loved you most in life." When Elizabeth received this letter, she was very sad. She wrote on the letter in her own handwriting, his last letter. After Robert's death, Elizabeth changed. She was no longer as lively as before. She often fell into melancholy. In 1595, she told her private secretary Thomas Anege, "Thomas, sometimes I look back and think if only I could have made different decisions. But it's too late now." Many things related to Robert were kept among Elizabeth's personal belongings. That golden ring, inscribed E+R Forever. The locket with Robert's portrait. More than 200 private letters. Remnants of candles used in the wedding ceremony. Elizabeth died on March 24th, 1603. After her death, shocking secrets were revealed when her personal belongings were searched. Her private secretary Robert Cecil, William Cecil's son, wrote this note. A marriage certificate with Lord Leicester was found in Her Majesty's private drawer, dated 1575. Witnesses, John D. Blanche Perry, Julio Borgaruxi. This document appears genuine. But this document was immediately burned, because after Elizabeth's death, James I had ascended the throne. If Elizabeth's secret marriage was revealed, there could be succession problems. In 1608, before John D. died, he wrote these lines in his secret diary. In 1575, I made our queen commit a sin. I witnessed her secret marriage. This secret has been burning me for 33 years. May God forgive me. But love also has power. Elizabeth and Robert truly loved each other. Shocking documents were found in archival research conducted in the 20th century. In 1953, secret marriage records of Dr. Julio Borgaruxi with the English royal family were found in Vatican archives. In 1978, Elizabeth's private diary was found inside a secret wall during the restoration of Greenwich Palace. In 1995, love letters from Elizabeth were discovered in the private archives of a family descended from Robert Dudley. These findings prove that Elizabeth and Robert's secret marriage was real. This story shows us that nothing we consider certain in history is actually certain. Elizabeth was known as the Virgin Queen for 45 years, but she was actually married. She had a man to whom she gave her heart, and she risked everything for this love. Perhaps all the historical figures we know have secret stories. Perhaps Caesar, Napoleon, Cleopatra also had love stories we never knew about. Secret marriages, painful decisions. Elizabeth's story also shows the contradiction between power and love. Sometimes we must sacrifice our power for love. Sometimes we must sacrifice our love for power. Elizabeth tried to choose both. She continued to be queen and secretly married. But this double life didn't make her happy. On the contrary, it caused her to feel regret until the end of her life. That golden ring, with its E+R Forever inscription, proves that a queen was human, that she loved, and that she suffered for this love. Elizabeth, one of history's most powerful women, was actually one of the most helpless women in her love.